Selectively enforce the rules. Okay, let's follow them to the letter now. I used to work for a manufacturing company who makes waste containers, dumpster and such. And at first it was a good job with a good manager and no problems. I enjoyed the work. It was dirty, physically demanding job, but kept me in good shape. I could just put in my earbuds and cruise through the day without any issues. My initial job was to prepare the units for painting by polishing imperfections with a sander and grinding down the areas that were too rough, as well as cleaning them up after the welders were done with them. But after a while they kept laying off so many people and dumping their jobs on me that eventually towards the end of my time there I was quality control, helped the painter, was a warehouseman, finisher, grinder and also janitor, for no additional pay beyond the small cost living raises we got once in a while. After about a year of working for that company prior to having all these jobs dumped on me without any issue, new managers showed up, and as they like to do, they started making all kind of changes just for the sake of making changes. Things that made jobs harder with no benefits, cutting corners that should not be cut and generally hurting productivity and workplace safety. The management in charge was bad, but it was not the end of the world. It made things harder for no real reason, but all in all things were still manageable. Until I ended up off work for about a month with a collapsed lung that I still to this day believe was caused by working conditions there and the lack of ventilation and PPE. When I came back to work, I was on light duty for quite some time since I had a surgery to repair the lung and prevent it from collapsing again. I went from golden boy who they called on when crap had to get done to the red-headed stepchild of the company. And management was doing everything they could to get me to quit. They would throw my tools away, hid my stools and I couldn't use them while I was working. Hassle me over things like my earbuds, citing safety as why I couldn't use them, even though OSAJ themselves told me it was not an issue. The production manager would lie about things and write up me for non-existent violations. Refused to fix my bay doors that had been crushed into by forklifts numerous times and had to be closed and opened with a crowbar by two people since the track was mangled. Other things include the company giving everybody in the plant raises except for me, catching me 5 minutes before leaving work to go on my weekend and informing me that we had to work the next day and selectively enforcing safety rules and even making rules up to the fly. After about 6 months, I had had enough and decided that if they want to constantly cite policy and safety rules to flip with me, then I could play the same game too. I would make this manufacturing plant the safest company on the planet and ensure the policy was followed to the exact letter. This was now my mission. I began to slow my work way down and only do the jobs I was hired and paid to do, instead of doing the workload of 10 employees with nothing in return. They now got exactly one person's worth of labor out of me. Customers' orders began stacking up, deliveries were late. Bad welds and welds that got messed during production were overlooked, causing the units to have to be repainted when they had to go back to the welding lines to be fixed. The warehouse became a wreck with containers backed up to the point that people did not even have room to work. I went from completing a large unit in 30 minutes to it taking me 2.5 hours on the same one. And not to mention all the repairs that needed to be done that were missed during production, when before I would have caught them before the units even left the production line. Other pretty things I included is not showing on Saturday to work when the manager would catch me at the last second and tell me I had to. I took to cutting out the text in the employee's handbook, citing that working unscheduled hours requires manager to notify you 3 days in advance and leaving a letter with that portion of the handbook on his desk the following Monday. There was nothing they could do since I was following the handbook to the letter. At this point it was a game of who would blink first. They could lay me off and I could draw unemployment on them, or I would quit. Next on the list was safety. They liked to hassle me so much about trivial things that I figured they would appreciate me going through the plant and documenting every single last OSAJ violation. Safety violation and anything else that was not right. I had a notebook that was filled with violations from one end of the plant to another. Things like crane lifts that were being used improperly with J-hooks that OSAJ previously warned the company about. The same J-hooks they liked to hide every time OSAJ came through the plant. Welders that had frayed cords around puddles of water. Tools being left on top of units that could fall off and hit someone. Lack of ventilation. Particle counts that were too high. Forklifts that were not serviced enough. I tag out equipment that technically shouldn't be used in this current state, and locked out the forklifts that needed brakes or any sort of maintenance. Eventually the production manager took the bait and untugged one of the forklifts I had locked out due to having bad brakes. Anybody who knows lockout procedure can understand what a massive flip up that is. Once I compiled my list of improvements, I went to the government official who was overseeing safety and procedure since we often work on government orders. I gave him my notebook, informed him of my manager taking the lockout off and defective forklift, then went on break and waited. About 30 minutes later, I saw my manager walking back from the head office and looking pissed beyond belief. Later I heard from someone who knows him that he got punished severely, especially for the forklift. From then on, he avoided me and wouldn't even speak to me or look at me. After that, I continued to slow my work pace down and got a bit of satisfaction each day from the complete crap show the place had become and how backed up it was every single day. After I left the company, I heard they hired 5 guys to do my job and that they still did a crap job at it. Had they treated me better instead of coming at me like they did, they would have been still getting the top quality of work from me that they got when I first joined them, and things would have went along just fine. I can't even imagine how much money I must have cost that company by sticking to the exact letter of the rules. A mother who knows her daughters well. My mom and I were speaking the other day about getting old and she told me a story about my cousins and their mother. There were 5 girls. None of them really cared for their parents. All of the sisters were very similar in their personalities and didn't care much for anything unless it benefited themselves. The father started getting poorly and none of his children visited. All were too busy or far away. He got worse and worse and his wife cared for him on her own. When their father died, the mother inherited all of his money in his will. The 5 children, who had all moved away and had limited contact with their parents, visited when they realized quite how much money their father had saved. They didn't want to see him alive, but as soon as there was a cent of money, they were attracted. They were livid when they realized that there was no money that they felt entitled to and wanted some of the money right then and there to spend and make their lives better. In fact, it went to their mother angered them greatly, but they hid it. Their mother said to them, "If you look after me now until I die, I'll take good care of you when I'm gone." Meaning that whoever doted on her would receive lots and most of the inheritance. She lived many years after that, and her life was filled with her daughters visiting, taking her to appointments, cooking for her, doing her laundry. She was treated like a queen by all of them. All the while they were waiting for her to pass and leave them her money. None of them cared for her really, and they were all vocal about this when not in her presence. One of the sisters, whom my mom saw regularly, would often make references to the money. She would say, "In future, when I get my share, I'm going to move house." Little comments about how it would be nice to drive a better car and take holidays. The sisters didn't care about their mother. They clustered around her, fighting for their mother's attention and money, so that they would be picked up as one that deserves it all. It was a disgusting display of fakeness. Their mother knew what her daughters were like. She knew that none of them genuinely cared about her, but she used the money to manipulate everyone into getting what she wanted. She spent her last years in comfort and with her every whim taken care of. When she died, the daughters waited the anticipation to see who was getting what. Finally they could buy those houses and cars. It turns out she had donated all of her money to a charity and left a check for each of the girls, so they could all buy themselves a new winter coat. Her exact words, noise. They'll need those coats because damn that was a cold move. Owe me money and act like a peepee. Enjoy a bunch of people showing up for a garage sale. Basically, a friend constantly owed me a little money for cigarettes, beer that I would pick up. He would promise every time to pay me back, and I would go out of my way to get him what he asked for. After a while I stopped wanting to do so, and he would get angry. I asked for a small amount, under $20, that he owed me for previous purchases, and he pretty much told me to get off his property and not talk to him anymore. Well, after about a week of this going on and me not getting the money back, I decided to take this into my own hands. I posted a Craigslist ad for an estate sale saying all must go, starting at a ridiculously early hour and saying he spoke Spanish. Told people to text or call him for questions and posted his name and phone number. Edit. I've gone ahead and taken down the ad after 12 hours. He's gotten his fair number of calls and visitors and don't feel like a second day is warranted. I also don't want to waste others' time too much. I know for a fact he's gotten visitors as he's all over social media trying to figure out who the flick did it, with suspicion it was me. Noise. Go to a big city's Craigslist like New York City, Los Angeles, etc. or all of them and post that you got a new TV and have no use for your old 60-inch TV. It's free to the first person. Post his phone number, not really wasting people's time, except for stupid people that think someone is actually going to give away free working 60-inch TV. Video on the screen tells the story. Entitled neighbor breaks into my apartment. Kid takes prescription drugs. Bought $100 bottle of champagne like me, just to pour that mother flipper down the drain like me. Would you use your water bill to dry the stain like me? Are you high enough without the Mary Jane like me?